Richard Burton stole Elizabeth Taylor from Eddie Fisher. Joan Crawford had 5 secret affairs during one marriage. Russell Crowe destroyed Meg Ryan's decade-long marriage. George Clooney's affair involved a pet pig, but wait till you see which one ended in a brutal fight that left someone hospitalized. Richard Burton. Okay, so we're starting with literally one of the most iconic scandals in Hollywood history, Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor on the set of Cleopatra. Like, this affair was so massive that even the Vatican got involved. Yes, you heard that right, the Vatican condemned them. That's how you know it was serious. So here's what went down. Burton and Taylor met in Rome during pre-production for Cleopatra in 1961, and at the time, Taylor was married to singer and actor Eddie Fisher. They'd been married since 1959, so this wasn't some brand new relationship either. At first, there was actually tension between Burton and Taylor on set, but that quickly turned into some seriously intense chemistry. Like those long filming days and emotional scenes, they created the perfect storm for something to happen. The affair started with discreet meetings in trailers and hotels, and both of them were dealing with emotional vulnerability and apparently a lot of alcohol. But here's where it gets messy. Paparazzi literally caught them kissing, and when those photos leaked, the entire world lost it. The media frenzy was absolutely insane, and the public outrage was off the charts. Fisher obviously confronted Taylor about everything, which led to their separation, and Burton also ended up leaving his wife, Sybil Williams. Taylor divorced Fisher in 1964 and married Burton just 9 days later. Wild, right? Though if we're being honest, their relationship was super tumultuous, and they actually divorced, remarried, and divorced again. But still, this affair literally changed Hollywood forever. But Burton and Taylor weren't the only ones making headlines in old Hollywood. Clark Gable. Next up, we need to talk about Clark Gable and Joan Crawford, because this affair was absolutely legendary in old Hollywood. Their relationship started way back in the early 1930s when they worked together on Dance Fools, Dance in 1931, and at the time, Crawford was married to actor Douglas Fairbanks Jr. They'd been married since 1929, so she was definitely not available. But here's the thing about old Hollywood. MGM literally controlled everything. On-set flirtation between Gable and Crawford escalated during late-night rehearsals and studio parties, and they started having secret rendezvous at Crawford's home whenever Fairbanks was away filming. Like, the sneakiness of it all? Absolutely wild. Eventually, MGM boss Louis B. Mayer discovered the affair and literally threatened to cancel their contracts if they didn't end it. That's how powerful studios were back then. They could just threaten your entire career. But despite Mayer's threats, the emotional intensity of their connection led to Crawford becoming increasingly dissatisfied with her marriage to Fairbanks. Crawford ended up divorcing Fairbanks in 1933, citing incompatibility, but everyone knew the affair with Gable played a major role in that decision. And get this, MGM actually suppressed most of the details about their relationship to protect both of their star images. Like, imagine having that kind of power to just cover up a scandal. The whole thing shows you how different Hollywood operated back in the day, but the drama, still just as intense. Speaking of Joan Crawford, Gable wasn't her only co-star conquest. Gary Cooper. So if you thought Joan Crawford only had one affair with a co-star while married to Douglas Fairbanks Jr., think again. Gary Cooper also slept with Crawford during her marriage to Fairbanks, and this happened around the same time as the Gable situation. Like, Crawford was really out here living her best life, apparently. Cooper and Crawford collaborated on Today We Live in 1933, but their affair actually began earlier through Hollywood social circles. The mutual attraction sparked at a party, which led to private dinners and super discreet outings where they tried to keep everything on the down low. They would meet in hotels and at Cooper's ranch whenever Fairbanks was traveling for work, taking full advantage of his absence. What made this affair particularly intense was that Crawford would confide in Cooper about her unhappy marriage, which obviously deepened their emotional bond beyond just physical attraction. It wasn't just about the affair, there were real feelings involved, which made everything even messier. Of course, rumors started circulating in gossip columns, which pressured MGM to intervene quietly and try to keep everything under wraps. But the damage was done. The affair definitely contributed to Crawford's 1933 divorce from Fairbanks, though Cooper himself remained married to Veronica Balfe throughout the whole thing. The double standard was real, but that's old Hollywood for you. But Clark Gable's wandering eye didn't stop with Joan Crawford. Clark Gable. Clark Gable really had a type, apparently, because he shows up multiple times in this list. This time, we're talking about his affair with Greer Garson in the mid-1940s, and honestly, this one was kind of an open secret on set, which really highlights Gable's reputation as a total ladies' man. Gable and Garson were paired together in the film Adventure in 1945, and at the time, Garson had been married to actor Richard Ney since 1943, so this was a relatively new marriage that Gable was interfering with. The flirtation apparently started innocently enough during script readings, but it quickly evolved into extended lunch breaks where they would disappear together. They spent so much time in Gable's dressing room that it actually caused production delays, which the crew definitely noticed. Like, imagine being so obvious about your affair that you're literally holding up filming. The audacity. Garson was apparently unhappy in her marriage and would confide in Gable about her problems, which led to increasingly intimate encounters between them. Here's where the Hollywood machine comes in again. Studio executives basically ignored the rumors to avoid creating a scandal, since both Gable and Garson were major stars. They couldn't afford to have their reputation damaged, so everyone just pretended not to notice. The affair ended when filming wrapped, but it definitely contributed to Garson's 1947 divorce from Ney, classic Hollywood mess. And Greer Garson, she had her own pattern of on-set affairs. Walter Pidgeon. Speaking of Greer Garson, she apparently wasn't done after the Gable situation. She also had a years-long affair with Walter Pidgeon during their multiple film collaborations, and MGM worked overtime to conceal this one too. Pidgeon and Garson first starred together in Blossoms in the Dust in 1941, and they went on to make 8 more films together. Like 8 movies. That's a lot of time to develop serious chemistry. The really messy part is that Garson married Richard Ney in 1943 while she was still in the middle of all these ongoing projects with Pidgeon. So this affair was happening throughout her entire marriage. Their relationship escalated to private meetings in dressing rooms and late-night drives, and it got serious enough that Pidgeon's wife Ruth actually discovered a love letter from Garson at some point. But here's the wild part. Ruth just kept silent about it. Imagine finding a love letter to your husband and just not saying anything. The restraint, honestly. Crew members definitely noticed their tardiness after lunches, which fueled a lot of gossip around the lot. Everyone knew what was happening, but no one could officially acknowledge it. MGM even paid off reporters to suppress stories about the affair. Eventually, the affair faded as Garson divorced Ney in 1947, but the whole situation shows just how much power studios had in controlling narratives back then. Fast forward to the 2000s, and on-set affairs were still destroying marriages. Russell Crowe. Okay, fast forward to the 2000s because we need to talk about Russell Crowe and Meg Ryan. Their affair during Proof of Life in 2000 literally ended Ryan's marriage to Dennis Quaid and sparked an absolutely massive tabloid frenzy, like this was everywhere. Crowe and Ryan met on the set of Proof of Life in Ecuador in 1999, and at the time, Ryan had been married to Quaid since 1991. That's a solid decade of marriage that was about to implode. The intense filming conditions and isolation in Ecuador apparently fostered emotional closeness and flirtation between them, which makes sense. When you're stuck on location together, things can get intense. The affair began with private dinners and then escalated to romantic getaways during filming breaks. They really weren't being subtle about it either, because photos eventually leaked to tabloids, which confirmed all the rumors and absolutely shocked the public. America's sweetheart, Meg Ryan, having an affair? People were shook. Quaid confronted Ryan about everything, which led to their separation announcement in 2000. The whole thing was super messy and played out in the media for months. Ryan and Quaid officially divorced in 2001, but here's the kicker. Crowe and Ryan's relationship actually ended pretty soon after too, so she blew up her marriage for something that didn't even last. The whole situation definitely damaged Ryan's image for years. Meanwhile, another movie set was brewing its own scandal. Antonio Banderas. Now let's talk about Antonio Banderas and Melanie Griffith, because their romance on the set of Too Much in 1995 led to both of them divorcing their spouses. This one actually worked out for them for a while though. Banderas and Griffith met while filming Too Much in 1995, and at the time, Griffith was married to actor Don Johnson. They'd been married since 1989, which was actually their second marriage to each other. They had married, divorced, and remarried, so their relationship was already complicated. Meanwhile, Banderas was married to Ana Leza. The on-set banter between Banderas and Griffith turned romantic during rehearsals and location shoots, and they began having discreet dates despite both being married. Griffith would confide in Banderas about her marriage troubles, which obviously accelerated the intensity of their affair. When you're sharing your deepest problems with someone, things get emotional fast. Tabloids started reporting sightings of them together, which pressured them to go public with the relationship. At that point, there was no hiding it anymore. Griffith divorced Johnson in 1996, and Banderas did the same with his wife, then married Griffith that same year. They actually stayed together until 2015, so this affair-turned-marriage lasted almost 20 years. Not exactly a quick fling, which makes it stand out from a lot of other stories on this list. But if you think that's fast, wait until you hear about this next one. Dean McDermott. This next story is absolutely wild because of how fast everything happened. Dean McDermott and Tori Spelling met on the set of the TV movie Mind Over Murder in 2005, and their affair started literally immediately. At the time, Spelling had just married actor Charlie Sheenan in 2004, so we're talking about a marriage that was barely a year old. McDermott was also married, but apparently sparks flew during their very first scene together, which led to them talking after hours. Here's where it gets absolutely insane. They literally slept together the very first night they met, despite both being married to other people. Like, they didn't even try to resist or take things slow. The intensity of their connection was apparently so strong that they confessed everything to their respective spouses within just a few weeks. Imagine getting that phone call from your spouse. Absolutely devastating. The tabloids picked up on the scandal after both of them filed for divorce, and it became this huge story. Spelling divorced Sheenan in 2006, McDermott divorced his wife, and then they married each other that same year. The whole thing from meeting to marriage happened in less than 2 years. That's what you call moving fast, I guess. Intimate on-screen scenes have a way of creating real-life drama, as our next story proves. John Malkovich. Let's talk about John Malkovich and Michelle Pfeiffer, because their affair during Dangerous Liaisons in 1988 ended both of their marriages. The movie's title was definitely fitting, given what went down behind the scenes. Malkovich and Pfeiffer were cast in Dangerous Liaisons in 1988, and at the time, Pfeiffer had been married to actor Peter Horton since 1981. That's 7 years of marriage that was about to fall apart. The thing about this movie is that it required a lot of intimate scenes, and rehearsals for those scenes built serious tension and attraction between them. The affair started with off-set dinners while they were filming in France, which sounds super romantic but was obviously problematic given their marriages. The emotional depth of their connection led to Pfeiffer seriously questioning her marriage and whether she wanted to stay in it. When you start comparing your spouse to someone else, that's usually when you know things are going downhill. Rumors spread among the crew pretty quickly and eventually reached Hollywood gossip circuits because people talk. Pfeiffer ended up divorcing Horton in 1988, and Malkovich also divorced his wife. But here's the twist. Even though they blew up their marriages for each other, their romance was actually pretty brief and didn't last long at all, so both marriages ended for essentially nothing. TV shows can be just as dangerous as movies when it comes to on-set chemistry. Michael Vartan. Moving on to another TV set affair, Michael Vartan and Jennifer Garner during Alias. This one definitely contributed to Garner's divorce from Scott Foley, and it was all over the tabloids at the time. Vartan and Garner started working on Alias in 2001, and Garner had just married actor Scott Foley in 2000, so this was a super new marriage. The long shooting hours and undeniable chemistry in their scenes apparently sparked flirtation that developed around season 3 in 2003. TV shows film for months at a time, so when you're spending that much time with someone, boundaries can definitely get blurred. They began dating discreetly off-set with private meetings, trying to keep everything quiet. Garner would confide in Vartan about her marital issues, which obviously deepened their relationship beyond just physical attraction. It became this emotional affair as much as anything else. Eventually, the media started speculating after there were public sightings of them together following Garner's separation. At that point, it was pretty clear what had happened. Garner officially divorced Foley in 2004, and she and Vartan dated for a bit before eventually ending their relationship too. Another case of an affair that didn't actually lead to a lasting relationship, which makes you wonder if it was all worth it. But some affairs got way more violent than just broken hearts. Tom Neal. Okay, this next one is absolutely brutal because it got violent. Tom Neal and Barbara Payton's 1951 affair led to a physical confrontation that put someone in the hospital. Like, this escalated to a whole different level. Here's the situation. Neal and Payton were already in a relationship when she suddenly married actor Franchot Tone in September 1951. But apparently, marriage vows meant nothing because just days after the wedding, Payton left Tone to resume her relationship with Neal. Imagine being Tone in this situation. You just got married and your wife immediately leaves you for another man. Devastating. Tone tracked them down to Payton's apartment, which sparked an absolutely brutal brawl. This wasn't just a heated argument. Neal beat Tone so severely that he ended up hospitalized with serious injuries. We're talking broken bones and a concussion. It was bad. The media frenzy that followed was insane, with photos of Tone's bruised and battered face all over the newspapers. Everyone was talking about it. Tone divorced Payton after just 53 days of marriage, which has to be one of the shortest celebrity marriages ever. And despite all the drama, Neal and Payton's relationship collapsed pretty soon after too. So much violence and pain for literally nothing. Old Hollywood playboys were notorious, and this next actor lived up to the reputation. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn was known for being a playboy, and his affair with Lupe Velez in the 1930s definitely lived up to that reputation. Velez was married to Johnny Weissmuller at the time, yes, the famous Tarzan actor. Flynn and Velez met through Hollywood parties in the mid-1930s because that's where everyone socialized back then. Velez had been married to Weissmuller since 1933, but that didn't stop her from pursuing Flynn. The affair began with secret meetings at Flynn's yacht and various homes because apparently having a yacht was the ultimate flex for conducting affairs back then. As things progressed, jealousy escalated as Weissmuller started suspecting something was going on, which led to huge arguments between him and Velez. Tabloids started hinting at the scandal, but studios suppressed most of the details to protect everyone's careers. That was just standard operating procedure in old Hollywood. Eventually, Velez divorced Weissmuller in 1939, citing cruelty, and the affair with Flynn was definitely a major factor in the breakdown of that marriage. The whole situation was messy, but it was just another notch on Flynn's belt of scandals. He was constantly involved in some kind of drama throughout his career. And speaking of Joan Crawford again, because of course we are, she had yet another affair. Glenn Ford. Joan Crawford shows up multiple times in this list, and honestly, I'm not even surprised at this point. This time, it's her long-term affair with Glenn Ford in the 1940s, which strained her marriage to actor Philip Terry. Ford and Crawford's affair actually reignited in the early 1940s after they'd had earlier flings, so they already had history together. Crawford married Philip Terry in 1942, but she continued seeing Ford throughout the marriage. Like, she didn't even try to make a clean break or commit to her marriage. She just kept the affair going. What made this particularly easy for them was that they were neighbors in Brentwood, so they could meet frequently at each other's homes and at social events without raising too much suspicion. Being neighbors was honestly the perfect cover for an affair. Biographies describe passionate encounters between them and emotional letters they exchanged, showing this was more than just a physical thing. Terry definitely suspected infidelity, which led to increasing marital tensions between him and Crawford. Eventually, Crawford divorced Terry in 1946, citing incompatibility that was heavily influenced by the affair. Crawford's pattern of affairs throughout her various marriages is honestly kind of wild when you look at her full relationship history. She really didn't let marriage vows stop her from doing whatever she wanted. In fact, Joan Crawford's affairs during her marriage to Franchot Tone deserve their own section. Spencer Tracy. Here we go with another Joan Crawford affair, because apparently she was involved with like half of Hollywood. This time it's Spencer Tracy in the 1930s, and it was part of Crawford's multiple infidelities that are detailed in biographies, like Not the Girl Next Door. Tracy and Crawford met through various MGM projects in the 1930s, and their initial professional admiration quickly turned romantic. The affair really kicked off during the filming of Mannequin in 1937, with flirtation happening constantly during rehearsals. They had undeniable chemistry both on and off screen. They arranged secret meetings at Tracy's suite or at remote locations to avoid being detected, because even in old Hollywood, people had to be somewhat careful. Crawford's marriage to Franchot Tone, which had started in 1935, was already seriously strained by her career demands and other affairs. So the Tracy situation was just adding to an already messy situation. Tone grew increasingly suspicious and started monitoring Crawford's activities, which led to major arguments between them. The trust was completely gone. Eventually, the affair with Tracy contributed to their divorce in 1939, with Tone citing mental cruelty. Though honestly, given all of Crawford's affairs during that marriage, it's hard to pin it on just one person. She was out there living her life. Crawford's affairs kept coming, this time with a major age gap involved. Tony Curtis. This next Joan Crawford affair is particularly interesting because of the age and power dynamic involved. Tony Curtis had a brief fling with the much older Crawford, and he actually recounted it in his memoir, American Prince. Curtis was a young, up-and-coming actor when he was introduced to Crawford at a Hollywood party in 1938. He was just starting out in his career, while Crawford was already a huge established star. Crawford, who was apparently drawn to his looks, invited him for private acting lessons at her home, which is honestly such a classic Hollywood move. Like, acting lessons, we all know what that means. The affair escalated quickly to intimate encounters during her marriage to Franchot Tone. Curtis later described it as exciting, but acknowledged the power imbalance due to her status and influence in the industry. She basically had the ability to make or break his career at that point, which makes the whole thing kind of problematic when you think about it. Tone's jealousy intensified as rumors spread through studio gossip, adding more tension to their already troubled marriage. The fling eventually ended as Curtis continued advancing his career, and Crawford divorced Tone in 1939. So this affair was just one of many factors that led to the end of that marriage. Crawford really put Tone through it. And if you're keeping count, here's yet another Crawford affair with Franchot Tone. Yul Brynner. Yes, another Joan Crawford affair. I told you she was involved with like everyone. This time it's Yul Brynner in the late 1930s, and it was noted in Crawford biographies as part of her consistent pattern during her marriage to François Tone. At the time, Brynner was working as a model and director when he met Crawford through social events in 1938. He wasn't even a famous actor yet. That would come later with roles like the King in The King and I. Their mutual attraction led to discreet dates and passionate meetings because Crawford apparently couldn't resist an attractive man regardless of where they were in their career. This affair unfolded amid Crawford's increasing dissatisfaction with her marriage to Tone. At this point it was clear she had completely checked out of that relationship. They kept the affair hidden, but it still added to the mounting marital tensions between Crawford and Tone. Eventually, Tone filed for divorce in 1939, heavily influenced by all of Crawford's various infidelities. Brynner went on to gain massive fame later in his career, while Crawford remarried shortly after the divorce. The whole situation with Crawford and Tone just shows how toxic that relationship had become by the end. Multiple affairs, constant fighting, jealousy, it was a mess. Jumping to the 1950s, where another legendary crooner got caught up in scandal. Frank Sinatra. Let's talk about Frank Sinatra and Lana Turner, because their mid-1950s affair happened during Turner's abusive marriage to Lex Barker, which she detailed in her memoir, Lana, the Lady, the Legend, the Truth. Sinatra and Turner reconnected at Hollywood parties in 1955, after being friends earlier in their careers. Their chemistry reignited during these social outings and quickly turned romantic. Turner had been married to Barker since 1953, but she confided in Sinatra about the abuse she was experiencing, which obviously created a deep emotional connection between them. They met in secret at hotels and at Sinatra's home to avoid creating a scandal, though of course in Hollywood, secrets never stay secret for long. Rumors eventually leaked to tabloids, which exacerbated Turner's already serious marital issues with Barker. The publicity around the affair just made everything worse. Turner finally divorced Barker in 1957, getting out of what had been a genuinely dangerous marriage. After the divorce, she and Sinatra remained close friends for the rest of their lives, even though their romantic relationship didn't continue. This is honestly one of the more sympathetic stories on this list, given that Turner was trying to escape an abusive situation. The 1960s brought us one of Hollywood's most famous playboys and his on-set conquest, Warren Beatty. Warren Beatty has a serious reputation when it comes to Hollywood romances, and his affair with Natalie Wood during Splendor in the Grass in 1961 led directly to Wood's divorce from Robert Wagner. Beatty and Wood met on the set of Splendor in the Grass in 1961, and the timing couldn't have been worse for Wood's marriage. The on-screen intensity between them absolutely spilled over into real life, with flirtation turning into actual dates pretty quickly. Wood had been married to actor Robert Wagner since 1957, but she was unhappy and seeking excitement, which Beatty apparently provided in abundance. They began having secret rendezvous during filming breaks, trying to keep everything under wraps. But like most Hollywood affairs, the secret didn't last long. Wagner discovered the affair, which led to major confrontations and their eventual separation. Imagine finding out your spouse is cheating with their co-star. That's got to be one of the worst feelings. Wood officially divorced Wagner in 1962, and she and Beatty dated for about a year until 1963. So again, another marriage destroyed for a relationship that didn't even last that long. Though in a weird twist, Wood and Wagner actually remarried each other in 1972, almost a decade later. Their story is definitely one of Hollywood's more complicated love triangles. Even Clint Eastwood couldn't resist the temptation of an on-set affair. Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood has had his share of scandals over the years, and his affair with Alice Faye Dorsey during Hang 'em High in 1968 was apparently an open secret on set. Here's how it went down. Dorsey was actually married to actor Pat Hingle, and she visited him on the Hang 'em High set in New Mexico in 1968. But instead of spending time with her husband, Dorsey ended up bonding with Eastwood during set downtime, and they spent a lot of time in his trailer. Like, imagine coming to visit your spouse at work and then hooking up with their co-star instead. The audacity is unmatched. They even went on location scouting trips together, which sparked tons of rumors among the crew. Everyone knew what was really happening on those trips. Hingle eventually noticed what was going on and confronted Eastwood, which nearly sparked a physical altercation. The tension on set must have been absolutely insane after that confrontation. The affair seriously strained Hingle and Dorsey's marriage, leading to their separation. And of course, studios suppressed most of the details to protect Eastwood's image, because by that point he was becoming a major star. Can't have scandals ruining the box office, right? And finally, even Hollywood's most eligible bachelor wasn't immune to affair drama. George Clooney. Let's wrap this up with George Clooney and Kelly Preston, because their 1987 affair contributed to Preston's divorce from actor Kevin Gage. This was obviously way before Clooney became the massive superstar we know today. Clooney and Preston met through mutual Hollywood friends in 1987, when both of them were still relatively unknown. Their flirtation turned romantic during dates and various social events, and the chemistry between them was apparently pretty strong. Preston had been married to Gage since 1985, but the marriage was already faltering, so the affair with Clooney kind of pushed things over the edge. Here's a fun detail. They actually moved in together briefly, and Clooney famously gifted Preston a pet pig. Yes, a pig, because apparently that's romantic. The pig actually became pretty famous later as Clooney's longtime pet. The public nature of their relationship accelerated Preston's divorce filing in 1987, because at that point there was no point in pretending the marriage was working. Clooney and Preston split up after about a year together, and Preston later married John Travolta, staying with him until her death in 2020. So while the affair ended Preston's first marriage, she ended up finding her true partner later on. And Clooney obviously went on to become one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. So there you have it. 20 absolutely wild stories of actors who crossed major lines and got involved with other actors' wives. From old Hollywood cover-ups to modern tabloid scandals, these affairs literally destroyed marriages, damaged careers, and created some of the biggest scandals in entertainment history. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, click on one of the suggested videos on your screen right now for more amazing content.